Salam, everyone. As we start our event today to celebrate and honor our Black brothers and sisters and their lives, we will start with acknowledging our place here in BC, being on the unceded territories of the First Nations people, including the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations. We're grateful for their hospitality and to be on their land, and we please ask that they accept that we are here as guests, and we hope to work together with them in peace and harmony. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Hi, everyone. My name is Naima. I will be moderating tonight's event, Celebration of Black Lives. But first, allow me to introduce myself. As I said, my name is Naima Bashir Ali. I'm a wife, a mother to 4 wonderful boys, and I'm also an educator. I have a master's degree in education and a license to teach math and science at the intermediate or middle school level. Besides brushing up on my culinary skills, I also have a passion for education and youth empowerment. I have particular passion for educating refugee and immigrant youth because I once was a child refugee. As a visibly Black Muslim woman, sometimes I get discriminated against because of one or both of my identities. However, I've had the fortune to have people who guided me, who cared for me, who are fair people, who strongly advocated, and who also became allies with me throughout my life. Just like how you are here today to advocate and to be an ally in the lives of Black youth, whether they are refugees, immigrants, or natives of this great land of ours. We are gathered here tonight to celebrate the lives and experiences of Black individuals. However, Black History Month should not just be celebrated in a single month. As a society, we should continue beyond this month in creating tolerance and eradicating racism together. Joining me are Brother Ibrahim al-Hajj, Brother Haroon Khan, MLA RACHNA SINGH, SILVIA MANGUE Elena, Brother Sami al-Sheikh, MARKIEL Simpson, our keynote speaker, Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick, and Brother Bilal Chima. Allow me to introduce the first speaker of the night, Brother Ibrahim al-Hajj, who is the former president of Sudanese Canadian Society, the vice president of Al-Ihsan Vocational Center, member of Unifor Union and NDP, a volunteer with Vancouver Foundation in Oak Avenue, and volunteer Imam and Islamic speaker. He will be reciting the Quran. Welcome, Brother Ibrahim.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم الله ولي الذين آمنوا يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور والذين كفروا أولياؤهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى الظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون ألم تر إلى الذي حاج إبراهيم في ربه أن آتاه الله الملك إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت قال أنا أحيي وأميت قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب فبهت الذي كفر والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين صدق الله العظيم صدق الله العظيم وبلغ رسوله الكريم. During this opening, I just have a short speech about some concerns of Muslims. I think this is like national matter. It is concerning the prayer of Muslims, and it is also the relationship between the employer and the employee. And if the employee is a Muslim, let us say that I have a concern about my prayer. Of course, we have 5 prayers a day. And those 5 prayers, each prayer is not exceeding 5 minutes. If I can pray those prayer at mosque or at home, that's okay. And if it is at my work location, if I'm an employee, and if I need to pray at my work location, of course, I need the suitable environment for that, like a quiet place or suitable place, quiet and separated. So that's, I think, my right. This is one side of the matter, which I think also the employer should be aware about the importance of my prayer. The other side, which is also very essential and very important, and I want it to be escalated up to the parliament also, because concerning me as a Muslim here, the prayer, Jum'ah prayer, it is only one time prayer in Friday, and which is essential and for every Muslim. And it is important for me also, and for any Muslim, to go and perform my prayer in the nearby mosque, either near to my home or near to my workplace. And the problem here, the employer mostly is not aware about this important matter for Muslims. And I want this to be escalated, as I said, maybe up to the parliament, because it is a concern and it is issue for everybody. And it is a reason for many Muslims to leave their job because of that. So I want to emphasize this point. I don't want to go in details, but I want to emphasize this point that all employers should be aware about the important about for our Jum'ah prayer, which can take like it is a time like 1 hour during Jum'ah day, Friday. It may be like 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock or from 1 to 2 o'clock. So this is important. You'll be very lucky if, of course, if you have a break time during that period and you can go and do your prayers there. But there is something which happened to me personally before. I left one of my jobs because of this matter, because the employer did not agree that I can leave the place and go and do my Friday prayer. So please, I want to escalate this matter and emphasize it. So I think it is essential matter. Of course, now we have COVID-19, which is, I think we have some restrictions, and we are accepting these restrictions. We don't go to mosque, but I think once the matter is settled down, I think that will be the time which we can get our rights. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Ibrahim, for the wonderful recitation and shedding some light on some important information regarding prayers. As we all know, prayer is mandatory. Jazakallah khair. Next, we have Brother Haroon Khan. Brother Haroon is President Emeritus of the Pakistan-Canada Association and Trustee of Masjid, Vancouver. Haroon carries on a lifelong commitment to service beyond self-inspired by his father, the late Riasat Ali Khan, a pioneer in the Islamic, Pakistani, interfaith, and multicultural communities, demonstrating continuity, leadership, and an ongoing engagement as a proud Canadian. Brother Haroon will be commemorating the life of Abu Bakr Baba Sana, a longtime member of our Muslim community in Vancouver and originally from Gambia. Brother Abu Bakr was a giant of a man with a distinctive smile, a caring heart, generosity of spirit, kindness, and firm faith, to name few. He passed away in his home country in 2011 after a brave battle with cancer. Welcome, Brother Haroon.
Thank you. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, sister, and greetings and assalamu alaikum to each and every one of you joining us on this broadcast and seeing this on a rebroadcast. I come to you live from the al-JAMIA Masjid, Vancouver, on 655 West 8th Avenue. And it's the first mosque established here in 1963. And back then our community was very small. And alhamdulillah, now our community is so big and we have mosques all over British Columbia, all over Canada, all over the world. And that's joining the many other places of worship that of other faiths. We join with mosques, with synagogues, with churches, with mandars and temples and other areas of public assembly for people to come together and get together and to really enjoin themselves in the action of being in faith. And it's wonderful to be here in this masjid, but it is very quiet. It is very empty. And echoing what the brother said earlier, mosques, churches, everything are shut down. And it's manifestly unfair that this place of worship, all places of worship, are shut down. When you can go to a bar, you can go to a restaurant, you can go to any place, go to a mall, and with no problem. But you can't go to your place of worship. It's it's a real problem, and we support a number of our spiritual places that are now joining and banding together to encourage the government to rethink the closing of these places of public assembly and worship. And it's very important that that these places remain and become open again. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's really heartbreaking, there's a resurgence in mental illness. There's a resurgence in addiction. There is a resurgence in alcoholism. There is a resurgence in crime, loneliness, post-traumatic stress disorder, all things where people need a place to go to grasp the handhold that does not break. And that handhold that does not break is the handhold of faith. And you can lift yourself up out of whatever abyss you get into. And these places of worship need to be open. And as I stand here today in this masjid, I'm very honored and blessed to be able to remember our dear brother, Abu Bakr. Brother Abu Bakr was from Gambia in Africa. And he arrived in Canada and he had quite a tough time of it. And he had a tough time getting his immigration. He had a tough time to be able to find work. He had a tough time just to be in a strange land. Yet, this brother radiated light. This brother radiated humility. This brother radiated in inner strength and in outer strength. He was ripped. He was jacked. He was our Black Prince, and really, truly a wonderful, wonderful man. And we miss him so very much. He instead of getting depressed, instead of getting upset, he basically devoted himself to the work of dawah. He went out and preached Islam whenever and wherever he could. He would be in Masjid. And I still remember the sound, the booming sound of his azan. And it's worth noting that as we celebrate Black lives, that the first Muslim revert was Bilal. And he was a Black man. And that inspiration for Abu Bakr to where the words of the Quran, the sayings of the Quran, the Sunnah of the Quran, everything that he talked about, it resonated in his bearing and in his being. And that, my dear respected brothers and sisters, really shows the core of a person, that no matter how difficult it was, because he didn't make a lot of money, he didn't have any great job, yet he was one of the richest men that I've ever known in my life. He was rich in faith. He was rich in character. And he's a role model for so many of us. He would go to the Lower East Side in downtown, where our Muslim Care Center is, where we've conducted the Ramadan Spirit program for many years. And he would go there and minister to the homeless, to the drug addicted, to the mentally ill, and to anyone who would listen. He would encourage them and talk to them about Islam. And he would talk to them in a way that connected to people by example, by his kindness. And I'm very happy to say that his character was such that people came to Islam. They embraced Islam through his efforts. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. He was a man of faith and taqwa. And that's something that we will never forget. But in the end, he had a very difficult battle, and he took to that battle with a ferocity, with a strength, and that was the battle against cancer. And he suffered from cancer. He got diagnosed, and he was hospitalized at VGH, at the Jim Pattison. At that time, that was a newly opened hospital. And one thing that it turned, that ward that he was in became a masjid in and of itself. It streams and streams of visitors 24 hours a day. When you could have visitors in the hospital, would come to be with him. And no matter how painful the cancer was, all the medication, the chemotherapy that he had to endure, not once did I see him show his pain. Not once. He still radiated that light. His smile still beamed, and he persevered. But when it came time where the doctors informed him that the case is terminal and that there is no hope, he very quietly checked himself out of the hospital and booked a flight home to Gambia. He didn't take any pain medication. He said he didn't need it. So he flew back to Gambia, and he was embraced by his family, by his children that are there. And within 2 weeks, he was gone. Now, 10 years later, on this anniversary of his passing, we're in this masjid where he was such a lively presence, remembering him, and we always will. So, my dear respected brothers and sisters, you know, every soul must taste death. It's part of the gig of being a human being. We're here, and then at some point we won't be here. But we are really judged by what we do in this life, and what we do in this life, it has its ups and downs. It has its highs and lows, and he experienced it. But his attitude towards life is an inspiration to us, and to be able to share his story gives us great joy in remembering him with fondness, because truly we wept. We all wept when he left the country. We all wept bitterly when he passed. And so we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers him with blessings, with a rahmah. Let light fill his afterlife, and that he attains paradise, Jannatul Firdaus. And we are very blessed to have known him. And I hope that through this talk about him, you'll have a bit of an understanding of who he was, and how blessed we were to know him. So I thank you, my dear respected brothers and sisters. Before I go, I would like to say that a few days back, there was another brother, Brother Faisal, who was diagnosed similarly in hospital with cancer and had complications of COVID. And he died just a few days ago. He was buried. And he too embraced death without fear. And so in your du'as, remember the people who have passed in whatever circumstance. And we pray for their benefit in the afterlife, and for us to have sabr and patience, and as we await our turn, for we all must taste death at some point. Let us live this life and taste life and live life in the way that serves not only ourselves and our families, but our Creator. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Haroon, for describing what kind of man Brother Abu Bakr was. I believe our community was lucky to have a man like him to share part of his life with us. Next, we have MLA RACHNA Singh. RACHNA is BC Parliamentary Secretary for Anti-Racism Initiatives. Prior to her election to the legislature, RACHNA worked as a psychologist and a drug and alcohol counselor. She became active in her labor union local and eventually became a national representative for the Canadian Union of Public Employees, representing workers through advocacy. Welcome, RACHNA.
Thank you so much, sister. Thank you for your kind words. And thank you, Brother Haroon, for the wonderful tribute that you just gave for an amazing man. I really wish I had the opportunity to meet him, but from what you have said, an amazing person, and has left a strong legacy behind him. Assalamu alaikum. I'm RACHNA Singh. I'm BC's Parliamentary Secretary for Anti-Racism Initiatives. On behalf of Premier John Horgan and the Government of British Columbia, I'm so grateful to be speaking to you from the traditional territories of the Semiahmoo, Ketsi, Kwikwetlam, Kwantlen, Tikait, and Swasan First Nations. This month is a time to honor, celebrate, and reflect upon the stories, experiences, and accomplishments of Black Canadians here in British Columbia and across the country. It is also a time to reflect on where we are as a province, as we are not immune from racism, including anti-Black and anti-Muslim racism. And we must do more to support those who continue to face hatred and systemic barriers every day. And I was hearing you, sister, and you were talking about your experience as a Muslim Black woman and the discrimination that you have faced. And I really want to acknowledge the leadership that many Black Muslim Canadians and Black community organizations have taken in the past and continue to take in advocating for social justice and equality for all. And I know people are hurting, and I want you to know that you are not alone, that I hear you and I understand your pain. Anti-Black Muslim racism is unique, and I'm so glad to see Islam Unravelled and al-JAMIA Masjid step up as allies and advocate for specific actions to tackle it in our communities. Our government is committed to working with Black and Muslim community organizations in collaboration with our anti-racism network, which is known as Resilience BC, to identify ways we can move forward on this issue together. We will be introducing BC's first anti-racism act and legislation to pave the way for the collection of disaggregated race-based data. COVID-19 has clearly shown that there are gaps in the system. Black, Indigenous, and cultural communities are being disproportionately affected, and the collection of disaggregated data will help us address those policy gaps in sectors like healthcare, education, and policing. 2020 brought systemic racism to the forefront. Community members have been advocating for change for a long time. I'm also honored to be on the special committee on reforming the Police Act that will be providing the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General with the recommendations later this year on how the Police Act may be reformed to address issues such as systemic racism. I know Minister Kalon is working hard on an initiative to improve representation of the Indigenous, Black, and people of color in the tech sector. Selina Robinson, the Minister of Finance and Minister responsible for the BC Public Service Agency, is keen on her mandate to improve representation of Indigenous, Black, and people of color in the public service. And I'm also honored to support Minister Whiteside in developing anti-racism plan for students in BC. We know that we cannot do this work alone. I, along with my colleagues, will continue to listen and work with communities across the province. Our government believes that BC should be a place that works for everybody, regardless of their race or skin color. We must continue to fight every day to end racism and inequality in this province. And thank you once again to Islam Unravelled and al-JAMIA Masjid for the opportunity to join your celebration this month and for the great work that you do throughout the year to strengthen and celebrate diversity in BC. Thank you so much.
Thank you, RACHNA, for all the hard work you do for the people. It is the work of people like you who truly make a difference in many people's lives. So I thank you again. Next, we have Silvia Mangue Elena. Silvia is a social entrepreneur, founder of Kuleya Love and Kuleya Culture Society, as well as the president of the Victoria-based BC Black History Awareness Society. She was born in the Equatorial Guinea and grew up in Madrid, Spain, and has lived in Victoria for the last 16 years. Silvia holds a bachelor's degree in business administration with a major in human resources from Kamosun College, as well as a postgraduate diploma in intercultural education from the University of Victoria and a certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion from Cornell University. Welcome, Silvia.
Okay, so I was really amazed to hear about his story and about his life in Canada. You know, it was really heartwarming. It's always nice to have more people like him, although that is difficult because we are so individual, so different, right? Anyway, as you said, my work is mainly because I have a passion, but not only to preserve the Black history, because if we don't do it, it will be erased. So we need people with passion to keep doing this work. And so I was so happy to hear about the previous guest. Sorry, my memory now is fuzzy, but I was happy to hear her saying that this government is so serious about addressing problems of racism, because we started in June. We started with the Minister of Education. They approached us to see if they could put more they could strengthen the Black curriculum in schools. And so then the election came, and then the work stopped, and I have been going after them, you know, to see when is that we can initiate the works again, you know. So I hope that this is for real, and I hope that this is true, because a lot of us are believing that this government is serious, that are believing that the government wants to fight racism. And I think one of the ways, and that's the way I do it mainly, of fighting racism is through education. Because when you educate people about the people that have formed the fabric of this country, you know, so then the racism, the layers of the barriers of racism lowers, because familiarity is very important. So, but when we don't teach our children, when we don't teach the history, then we have the danger to falling into conjectures, right? And then we make racism remarks, and we make racism we behave in a way that is racist, and that can be very detrimental for all of us. You know, it was very hard to hear that Brother Abu Bakr couldn't find job. Why couldn't he find job? Right? And I just leave it there. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing your experiences and your knowledge. And thank you for continuing to shed light on important issues such as anti-Blackness. Next, we have Brother Sami Al-Sheikh. Sami is a local Islamic scholar with the Al-Ihsan Educational Foundation in Surrey. He has been a community spiritual leader in BC for 11 years, focusing on providing education, guidance from a spiritual perspective for minority youth. He has conducted research into the Islamic perspective on race and relations, focusing on how the Quran refers to the unity of humanity as a whole. Please welcome Brother Sami.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. All the praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all the salutations and praising to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Good evening for everyone. And because we have so many names, so I cannot really go by name by name. So I just thank all the brothers and sisters who are organizing this event. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and guide us all to the reality and to the message that our Creator has made us, and He has created this earth for us to live. And one of the message of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that it's a message for whole mankind. And in the Quran, there's so many places in the Quran, the verses that addressing mankind. Ya ayyuhan nas. So people, all people, that this message is for you. And this message is to make your life better, whether in this world or in the next world. I'm very blessed and I'm very honored to be in this gathering and to also talk from Al-Ihsan. Al-Ihsan is a place which is a Islamic educational institution. And Islam Unravelled initiated from this place where I'm sitting now. And where I'm sitting now, this is a part of Al-Ihsan, which is when we congregate together to pray. And it's I'm lonely here. I'm just echoing also Brother Haroon. I'm just by myself, and it's cold in here. It's you know, there's no congregation. There is not that warmth, which is something that we all humans looking for. But I'm still thanking God, thanking Allah that at least I have the company of you. and we are sharing all these concerns and worries that how we can make our country, where we choose to call home, a better place for us and also for our children and generations to come. So going back to the address of Almighty God is that that it's one of the signs of Him, that He have created us. He has created us in different colors and different backgrounds and different nations. And He mentioned what is the purpose behind it. The purpose is that we can appeal to each other, that we can be attracted to each other. And then we can ponder and think, what is the purpose of our life? How we can make our life better, and how we can help each other so we can be guided. And so what I want to share with you today is actually, when I listened to Brother Haroon words, and also Brother Ibrahim, it just made me think of that one Black Canadian Muslim brother, Abu Bakr. And so it just made me change my mind that I want to talk only for the rest of maybe a couple minutes left for me about that individual, that brother, rahmatullah alayhi, may Allah bless him with mercy. He's in another world that I want to share with you. That I met him twice. And the first time I spent about a whole day with him, almost a whole day. So I met him in the morning, and then this brother was just taking me. He was taking me in Vancouver, and we were going from a place to a place, from a Chinese restaurant to a park, to a masjid, a mosque, and to talk to everyone. And I still remember how we walk into that Chinese restaurant and how he was making everybody happy and smiley and laughing. And it just, when I think back, that was probably 10 years ago, maybe. It just make me feel that connection, that human connection. And I still remember the Chinese lady who was busy. She was managing the restaurant. She has to do the orders and do all these things. But how he could have, he was able to make her smile and laugh, and out of that, and give a few minutes of her time to really listen to him and talk to him. And then in that park, we were also talking to some of the brothers who are just somehow they became homeless in this land. And it's, when I think about it today, it just really humbled me. It made me feel that, there is a lot to do. There is a lot to do. What kind of change happened in this last 10 years? Are we actually in a better place now? Are we actually in a better condition? And it just, unfortunately, I have to say, I don't think so. And I'm sure many of you agree with me that, yes, we made it a long way. And today I'm talking that all the praise be to God, and the thanks be to Him, and also those people who work hard to bring us here. But there is there is a long way to do. And what I just want to share with you now is only now when I start also reading and about Abu Bakr and his life, I came to remember, because I know another brother whose name is also Abu Bakr, same name. And for some reason I was thinking, why do I call him Boba? When I meet him, I call him Boba. So now I remember why, because it was that name, Boba, of Brother Abu Bakr, that we used to call him, that is still in my heart. And this is the kind of sacrifice, and this is the kind of life that I should be as a Black Muslim person in Canada, I have all my 3 children who are born here, and they're Canadian, and we are all proud to be here. That this is the kind of life that we should really do our best and work hard to make that kind of harmony, which will make us all live together as humans. People are free to worship whatever they want to. This is their freedom. But I can think of myself as I want my child, my oldest son, who is also here listening actually, to be proud of his background, where he came from, and also be proud of this country where he lives now. So thank you very much for your participation in this. And one thing, I wasn't planning to say this, but I think it is time to really understand, and our governments and our parliament representatives who are here, that how is it important that spiritual connection, that spiritual life is very important for people of faith, whatever faith they're following, and congregation in a place of worshiping God is actually essential. It is essential. So the other day I was taking my children, I have to take them somewhere, and we were in Costco, but I can tell you I could not feel very spiritual there. But I know that I cannot bring them to the mosque, even with all the restrictions and all that. So we were in a place, and also yesterday I was in a place, a restaurant basically. One brother invited me to go there, and he said, "Okay, let's put our mask because we have to walk into the restaurant now." And then a few seconds only, then when you are in the dining place, we were basically in 100, maybe 200 square feet place, and there were about 12, 15 people there with no masks. So if the food for the body is essential, and we agree with that, the food for the spirit and for the soul is important for us. So I think this is one of the things that we hope that today is a time to convey this message, and have some ears and some hearts and some minds who can actually understand how important is it for us, whether we're black or white or any ethnic background or any spiritual background. But I'm talking as a Muslim, black Canadian who live in this country and want to feel that I want to practice my religion and have that, just have that that food for my soul and for my family and for my community, so we can all together be free to open the doors of our masjids and for everyone to come. And I know that many of the non-Muslims, they used to come to our masjid, and for high school students to learn about Islam and to connect. So this is the connection that we need to build. And thank you very much for this. I really appreciate. And I'm looking forward to definitely to listen to the rest of our participants today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Sami, for explaining how Islam teaches unity for all people. Jazakallah khair, and may Allah reward you for all the hard work that you do for your community. Next, we have MARKIEL Simpson. MARKIEL is a Vancouver-based community organizer, a leader, and a member of the BC Community Alliance. The BCCA is a community-based organization dedicated to combating the structural inequalities created by anti-Black racism. MARKIEL and the BCCA are currently working to introduce a Canadian Black history curriculum into BC schools. Welcome, MARKIEL.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me. And thank you to all the previous speakers. It's been really meaningful to hear from all of you. I should start by saying that I'm joining you all on the unceded territory of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam First Nations. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And I wanted to start by saying that I'm really thankful that this event is named after celebrating Black lives, because so much of the conversation around being Black and Black history and Black History Month is, it perpetuates racism in a sense, but it doesn't actually celebrate Black history. It doesn't celebrate current Black people and what they're doing and the contributions that they're making. And it focuses more so on racism, which isn't Black history. I'd say Black history is very inclusive and very loving, and a history of fighting for equality. And so when we position Black history, and it's something that the Ministry of Education is said in so many media releases when asked about teaching more Black history, they say, well, we teach about the transatlantic slave trade a little bit and the Underground Railroad. And I think for anybody to think that of a group of people that is their most meaningful aspects to their history is just the foundation of misunderstanding, but also the perpetuation of the hate in the past. So I'm really happy to get an opportunity to think about the things that we can celebrate together. So thank you all for that. I guess I should speak a little bit about the work that we've been doing. And I'm really happy to see SILVIA on this call as well, because it's been tough, but I think what's been really encouraging in this last year is that the dialogue is now starting to shift from that of the past of, you know, so much hardship and negativity to now thinking about how can we change our institutions to not only see color, but to also champion and celebrate racialized people. So education, we believe at the BC Community Alliance, is one of the main ways. And that's why we've been organizing with members of the community. And now actually all 60 school boards in the province are amplifying our message and calling on the provincial government and the Ministry of Education to accept our petition to teach Canadian Black history, and specifically Canadian Black history, because there's actually so much. It's so much to learn about Canadian Black history and our contributions here, but also to provide adequate training for all teachers and to create a database to collect all incidents of racism so that we can start to assess the scope and shed light on what has for so long been hidden. So it's my hope that hopefully in the next year, we can start to work with people in those institutions like RACHNA. I see the Mayor of Burnaby's on this call, like Mayor Hurley, and so many other people who are committed to this work. And you know, for so long we've been calling out for help. You know, I think when I think about some of the experiences of my Black brothers and sisters of different faiths and of different backgrounds, and the difficulties that they face in life here in Canada that we don't talk about, you know, it's really upsetting, and it compels us, and I think it should compel us all towards action. I think about members of my own family who practice Islam, and you know, we were born here, and if they're wearing a hijab or a cover, being told to go back to their own country on a daily basis, and all different forms of hate, and not having any means to hold the perpetrators of hate to account. I think it really, what that signals to me, at least as an individual, and I think possibly more racialized people as well, is that we aren't worth being celebrated, we aren't worth being protected, and we aren't worth being championed. And that's a really disheartening thing to think about. But I'm really heartened by community and by the strength that we hold in our different places of whether it be worship or at work or in community-based groups, that we still come together and we celebrate. And even now, 10 years later, I'm failing to remember the full name, but Boba. We're here celebrating Boba's life today, 10 years later, and that's from strength in the community. And there's so much more strength that we can share with those institutions, and what we're looking for those institutions to reach down and hold our hand and pull us up, and so that we can all do this work together. And it can't be done by individuals on the ground. And I'll continue to work day in and day out. It's tough work, but I'll keep doing it as long as I have to as an individual. But I really hope that the work will be done by our governments and by our institutions to celebrate all lives and to end hate, race-based hate and faith-based hate throughout our country and our province. So thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you, Markiel, for the work that you do. I'm really looking forward to that curriculum. As an educator, I believe a curriculum that's infused how Black people paved the ways for many groups' history is an important knowledge for many. So thank you for that. Next, we have our keynote speaker, Brother Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick, is a globally renowned Islamic scholar, historian, educator, and community leader. He has a PhD in history with a specialization in West African Islamic history from the University of Toronto. He is a senior lecturer at the Al-Maghrib Institute and the Islamic Institute of Toronto. Dr. Quick is an honorary chief in Sierra Leone and an honorary member of the Order of Arctic Adventures and a recipient of Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. Please welcome Brother Abdullah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallam ala sayyidil awwaleen wal akhirin. Nabiyana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon all of the prophets, and especially our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, and his family and his companions to the day of judgment. My beloved brothers and sisters, to our friends, to our guests, I begin with the greeting words of the righteous. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And these are the words of peace, and I pray that this initiative taken up by Islam Unravelled will be a source of peace and a source of understanding. And it's very important that this is taking place at a time when the COVID-19 has locked down people throughout the world, and the economic recession is rising, and there is tension, a rise in racial tension. And we find ourselves now in Black History Month. And so things are coming together, and it's important for us to look at our challenges and then to celebrate the beautiful history and the culture that we have. One of the founders of Black History Month, Carter G. Woodson, in the United States, he made a number of statements. One of them is that if a race has no history, it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. So literally, what he was talking about is an organized move to wipe out the history of African people and Black people, especially in the West, in order to maintain a type of white supremacy. And this is a challenge that we have to recognize and face as we celebrate. And that is that we are living in a time of white supremacy, of racism. And racism has got three parts to it. The basis is ideas. Racism is an ideology that one group feels it is superior to another group, and it's justified in doing what it does. This ideology, in many cases, expresses itself with words, expressions. And this is what most people think racism is. They think it's just racist words that you're calling, or names that you're calling people. That's just a section. But the most dangerous part of it today for us is what we know as institutionalized racism. And that is where the color of your skin, your ethnicity, something about your physical self can actually determine your value in a society. And so when we think of racism, we have to think about the three areas. But today we want to look at the ideology, because the basis of white supremacy is an ideology. And this is where the curriculum is so important, Brother MARKIEL Simpson, and the work that you're doing is so vital, because we are living in what you could call a type of Eurocentric discourse. That is where Europe has been placed in the center of the world and everybody else is on the periphery. And just to give you an example of this, because it's an exhaustive topic, I grew up in America with the statement that Columbus discovered America in 1492. But we know the reality is that Columbus was lost and he bumped into America on his way to India and called the people Indians. He didn't know where he was. And so when we deconstruct history, when we take it apart and then put it back together in a more objective way, we could say that Columbus was discovered in 1492. You see the difference between the two? Because now you are taking into the facts, or you are taking into consideration the fact that the First Nations people lived in this part of the world, some say between 10 to 20,000 years. There were over 73 million indigenous people living in the Americas when Columbus came to this part of the world. So how can you say he discovered the place? But this has been enshrined within historical curriculums all over the world, and it's only now being erased. And so with this in mind, we want to look at Africa itself, because this is our challenge we're looking at tonight. Because European writers, they would depict Africa as a dark place, as a backward place. And one of the so-called great historians, Arnold Toynbee, even said that Africa has done nothing for the onward flow of civilization. I want to celebrate with you when we start unpacking this. Let's look at the map itself. The maps that we're using of Africa are distorted. The real map, the real reality, you can put India and China into Africa and you still have room. It is a huge place. And if we go back in time to move along in history, celebrating our Blackness, celebrating the achievements of Black people, we need to go back almost 5,000 years. When we go back to ancient Egypt, and this is a map of ancient Egypt where you would see Upper Egypt is the bottom part and lower is the top, because the Nile flows from south to north, because the mountains are in Kenya and in Uganda. And so it was around the year 3200 BC that Namir, or Menes, the Pharaoh of Egypt, he united Upper and Lower Egypt and made it one of the most powerful political entities in the world. That's 3200 BC. Now, this is an actual bust of the face of Menes himself. And when you look at his face, you can see clearly this is an African man. And that is the reality of the early Egyptian civilization, that it came from the south and it went north. And that is an amazing thing, but not just alone, the fact that he united Upper and Lower Egypt. By 2650 BC, let's celebrate. The Black Egyptians built the step pyramid of Saqqara. And this building, which is an amazing structure, is still there today. This is a recent shot. If you have a building in Vancouver that's 100 years old, it's a national monument. This is over 5,000 years old and it is still standing. Look at the structure, look at the work that they did underneath the building. I traveled to Saqqara myself, went down to the bottom of the pyramid, and you find rooms like this with ancient hieroglyphics and decimal points and so many different amazing bits of information. Let's take it a step further in our celebration. We're going to ride on our camels and we'll go to a place called Giza. And in Giza, we find the Great Pyramid of Giza. 2560 BC, this pyramid was constructed. Now, for most people, we don't even think in terms of BC. We think people that humans were cavemen in BC. But this pyramid was built for a great African Muslim or African leader, Egyptian leader, whose name was Khufu. Now look closely at his face. That is an African man, not how it's depicted in the movies, where you will see Egyptians depicted as Mediterranean people. This is an African people. Take off his hat and put on a baseball cap. And he looks like, there's a famous basketball player, LeBron James, right? He looks like somebody, an African person today. This is a great leader. Look at the structure that was built as a national project. If you focus on this shot of the Great Pyramid, look down in the middle, the white little dot, that's a water truck. So try to understand how big this building is. It had 2,300,000 blocks of granite. The corners were perfect right angles. They faced north, south, east, and west. It was the largest building in the world to the 18th century. The bricks, in some cases, were 20 tons. And if you don't believe how big it is, look at this brick. That's me in the picture. 20 tons. How did African people take granite from Aswan in the south, carry it north, and build a structure that nobody has been able to reproduce up until today? By the year 2000, great universities had developed, one called Karnak in 2000 BC. I want you to look at the columns inside of this temple or this university in Karnak. Compare this to the Greeks. Now, we are taught within our present curriculums that science and math came from the Greeks and then from the Romans. But the ancient Greeks were not racist people. The Greeks said we got our civilization from the Egyptians, and they were dark-skinned people with curly hair. They had no problem with this. Now, let's go back in BC. Remember, 2650 BC, the Great Pyramid. You got to go about 2,000 years later to 700 BC, then the Greek civilization starts. Let's take another look at the Stonehenge. This was the height of British civilization back in BC. Compare the Stonehenge to the Great Pyramid, and then we can begin to see how history has been distorted and the work that we have to do to deconstruct the lies and bring it in a more neutral, positive way that our young people can take it. Taking it a step further to the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, because this is partly connected with Islam Unravelled. And even Muslims would be surprised to know that Black people in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, were not weak people. The word aswad in Arabic has a number of meanings. You can say sawad, meaning blackness. When you say al-aswadan, that refers to dates and water, which are two good things. If you talk about sada yasudu, sayyid, aswad refers to power, to mastery. Your sayyid is your master. As-sawad al-a'zam is a majority. So Black people and Blackness was not a negative thing in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. As a matter of fact, it is reported that in the 5th year of the prophethood, that's around 615 AD, after Prophet Muhammad was calling to the oneness of God, he was breaking down racial differences, he was breaking down class differences between rich and poor, and so he was persecuted. And his followers were tortured so bad that he said to them, you can now go in a type of migration. And so they took refuge, not in Syria, not in Iraq, not in Pakistan, not in Malaysia or Turkey. They took refuge in Africa. This is called the first hijrah, the first migration. And you'll see it on your map. They went across from where Jeddah is today, and then down to present-day Eritrea on the coastline, and they went up into the highlands of present-day Ethiopia, and they found the Aksumite Empire. The Aksumite Empire was considered to be one of the greatest empires in the ancient world. And the prophet said to his people, if you go to Abyssinia, it would be better for you, for in it there is a king who will not tolerate oppression. It is a land of truth. Go there until such time as Allah shall relieve your distress. He said, Hiya ardu sidq. He's talking about Africa now. It is a land of truth. This is an Arabian prophet who sends his followers as refugees into Africa to a Christian king whose title was An-Najashi, or the Negus. His name was Ashama. They had an amazing society. The largest obelisk in the world, you see the obelisk there. They had amazing technology. And Najashi, he gave sanctuary to the Muslims. And they were able to stay there for a period of time. This is of Masjid al-Najashi in northern Ethiopia. People are suffering there now. Unfortunately, it is in Tigray land because Najashi was Tigray. And but still, it's an amazing story. Ashama, before he died, he embraced Islam. And the proof of that is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made the janazah prayer for him in absentia, janazah lil ghaib, first time it was ever done. And he goes down in history as one of our great leaders. 15 Sahabas died there in Ethiopia. But what a lot of Muslims don't realize, and history books generally don't record, is that 32 Abyssinians, Ethiopians, migrated to Medina when the large migration went from Mecca to Medina. And amongst the early Sahaba, there were many male and female, because generally when people speak about Black Muslims or Blackness in the time of the Prophet, they say Bilal. And no doubt, Bilal is an important thing. But did you know that Bilal had a sister whose name was Ghafira? Did you know that Bilal had a brother named Khalid? Did you know that the mother, the second mother of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Ayman Baraka, the dry nurse who later became like his mother when his original mother Amina died, she was an Ethiopian. Did you realize how many of the people there? I want to give you just some of the names because this is a big study. Julaybib, Sa'd al-Aswad, Salim Mola Abi Hudayfa is one of the top 5 masters of the Quran. He was a Black man. Usama ibn Zayd, Muhja, who was the first martyr or shaheed in the Battle of Badr. Mughith, Muhammad ibn Maslama, the knight of the Prophet. Ubadah ibn Samit, radiallahu anhum ajma'in. These were the followers in the first generation that's considered to be the best generation. But they were under attack. The Romans attacked from the north, the Persians attacked from the east, and they responded to the attacks, and they defeated the Byzantine Romans and found out that the people were suffering under oppression. And so the Egyptian people, the Coptics at the time, called for the Muslims. And Amr ibn al-As, radiallahu anh, was sent into Egypt. Muslims started to take away all of the holdings of the Byzantines. You look at the map where it's dark green, and you will see where Islam spread. Within 100 years, it had reached these lands. When the Muslims reached to a place called Ifriqiya, that's the first modern use of the word Africa, and it was the word for Tunisia, Tunis at the time, they recognized that there was gold coming from the south below the Sahara. The greatest gold mines in the world at the time were coming from the Senegal, below the Senegal and below the Niger River. Great empires were developed, and let's celebrate some of these great empires. The West African Empire of Ghana, of Takroa, of Mali, of Songhai. There are so many amazing stories in West African history and African history in general. One of the facts which is interesting for the young people, and if you Google it, just when you get a chance, put it in your phone. Who was the richest man who ever lived? Was it Jeff Bezos? No. The richest man who ever lived was Mansa Musa. This was the emperor or the emir of Mali, and he had more gold than anybody, pound for pound. He is the richest person ever lived in history. And he made pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 with over 72,000 followers. Mansa Musa, when he returned from Mecca, remember he had so much gold, he was changing the economy of every country that he lived, that he reached. He used the gold strategically, and he brought back books, scholars, architects, missionaries. And when he came to the top of the desert there, the Niger, he fell in love with a city called Timbuktu. And Timbuktu is not a joke. We used to say when I was young, oh, go to Timbuktu. I mean, oh, get lost. Timbuktu was a great center of trade where the camel met the canoe. It also became a center of learning. And it was recognized by the sultans of Morocco, the Ottoman Empire, of the Turks, throughout the world. By the 16th century, Timbuktu had the Sankore University, which had over 25,000 students, 150 small Quran schools, around it. Think about this, 1500s, no Oxford, no Sorbonne, no University of Toronto. Black African Muslim students were studying not only religious studies, they were studying astronomy and studying math. That's a celebration. And Arnold Toynbee would turn over in his grave if the reality got out to the world, that knowledge did not go from north-south, that knowledge actually went from south-north. But eventually, when the trade routes changed to the oceans and the Muslim nations became weak because of internal weaknesses, the European nations became strong. And the Atlantic slave trade began. And this is where Europe then sent their boats to West Africa and Central Africa on the coastlines, and they stole people, they captured people, they bartered with one tribe against another, and they were able to bring millions of people across the Atlantic into South America, the Caribbean, United States, and yes, even Canada, because Canada had slaves as well. Countless numbers of people died in the Middle Passage, and we celebrate their resistance. We celebrate their dignity that they had, and all the way through, they never bowed down. They struggled. And what we are recognizing today is that somewhere between 15 to 30% of the enslaved Africans and political prisoners were actually Muslims. And we're able to trace their stories because they were writing in Arabic language, their local language, Arabic, and their writings are existing today. And we're able to follow their stories. There's a number of eyewitness reports, written documents, autobiographies, records. It has come to the surface, more and more information. I want to just celebrate for a moment with a few of the people. Abdurrahman ibn Ibrahim, he was born in Timbo, that's in Guinea. Now he was in 1762, educated in Timbuktu. He was enslaved in Mississippi, but he returned home in 1829. The first country to recognize the United States was Morocco, the Sultan of Morocco. And it was a treaty between George Washington and the Sultan that any Muslim who was captured should be released. And when they found out about Abdurrahman, the government, they released him. Ayub ibn Sulaiman, who was born in 1700 in Bundu, eastern Senegal. He was a scholar who prayed 5 times a day, even in slavery. He wrote the whole Quran from his memory. He was recognized also by the United States government. He returned back to West Africa. Omar ibn Sayyid, who wrote his own biography in Arabic, and it still exists today in the museums in the United States. Oh, Lizzie Gray, a Muslim woman in South Carolina. Fatima or Phoebe, these are known Muslim women in the Sapelo Islands off the coast of Georgia. Francois Macandal, born in Guinea, and bookmen They were marabu, what is called marabu. They were traveling clerics. And they were the ones who helped to initiate the Great Revolution in Haiti. And Toussaint Louverture, took this rebellion and organized it to liberate Haiti for the first time from colonialism. The Maroon resistance in Jamaica. We recognize and we celebrate Nanny of the Maroons, a Jamaican hero. Also Sam Sharp. And I had the opportunity to live in Jamaica and travel high up into the Cockpit Mountains. And there is a Jumu'ah hole. There is a place where Muslims would make their prayers. There is Arabic writings amongst the Maroons. But it has been recorded that the Maroons won their freedom. But in 1795, the British tricked them and they made a treaty. And so the Trelawney Maroons, many of them were brought to Canada, to Nova Scotia, and stayed for a period of time. And there is a rich history of African people and Muslims also who were in Nova Scotia. Many of them went on to Sierra Leone. Also during this slavery period, there were other Muslims whose stories are now coming out in Canada. Because when slavery was eventually abolished, it was not because the European colonialists loved the African people. No. It was because the rebellions were reaching the level that they couldn't take it anymore. And it wasn't viable financially. And so there were great abolitionists. In America, they are recognizing Harriet Tubman. She would take the slaves on the Underground Railroad, hiding in people's homes, and they would come all the way up to Canada. Frederick Douglass, and it's interesting because when Frederick Douglass' family has been investigated, his mother came from the Bailey family who came on the same Georgia coast, and they were from Saleh Bilali, and so he actually has Muslim roots within his family as well, a great leader. And so people suffered and traveled on the Underground Railroad. And they made it to the north, way up to Canada. They struggled as much as they could, but slavery was a terrible thing. And people suffered. They lost their language, lost their religion. Families were broken up. Their original lifestyle was only a distant memory in some cases. But that resilience, we celebrate today the resilience of the African people who were able to maintain their dignity and suffer through slavery. And eventually, after it was supposedly ended, the Reconstruction period, the Jim Crow period, these are important times to study and to understand that up until today, there is still a form of slavery that goes on, an economic slavery, a mental slavery. That's the reason why when George Floyd said, "I can't breathe," and everybody said it around the world, it's not just physically breathing. I can't breathe spiritually. I can't breathe educationally. I can't breathe in my lifestyle. But we celebrate on this occasion some of the inventions of Black people. Now, you would think after all of this slavery, after millions of people dying, after your culture being destroyed, you would be a useless people. But I want to celebrate to you some of the inventions made by Black people. And this is a shock for some Muslims too, right? Because they're not aware, of the reality of African people in this part of the world. Think about this. The automatic gear shift was invented by Richard Spikes in 1932. He was a Black man. Elijah McCoy, who's a Canadian Black man who went to America. He was famous for over 57 US patents. He was so famous in dealing with the lubrication of steam engines that people would say when they got an engine or a train, "Is it the real McCoy?" And we used to say that when I was young, growing up in America, the real McCoy. In other words, is it something that Elijah McCoy had his hand in? But how many people would think that Elijah McCoy was a Black man? Because McCoy is an Irish name, right? So how many people would think he was a Black man, Canadian? Your ironing board. Think how life would be if Black people didn't make certain inventions. The ironing board was done by Sarah Boone. Garrett Morgan developed the gas mask, traffic signals, your signal light. Stop at red, slow down at yellow. It was a Black man who invented this. Charles Drew, he developed the blood bank. Look how important the blood bank is today. Shirley Jackson, major development, touch tone telephones, caller ID, fiber optics. Think about this. After all this destruction, Black people are still making major inventions. I'll just list a few because of our time. The automatic elevator doors, Alexander Miles. Clothes dryer, George T. Sampson. Electric lamp, Louis Latimer. Folding chairs, John Purdy. The lawnmower, Albert Burr. The mop, Thomas Stewart. Potato chips, George Crumb. What would our life be without potato chips? America's first modern clock, Benjamin Banneker. The mailbox, Philip Downey. This is just a few of the hundreds of inventions that have been made. So our people are still strong, our legacy continues. And we remember through the example of Malcolm X, al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, one of the great African Muslims. And many people know Malcolm X with a nice suit on and a bow tie, but this is Malcolm before he died. He has the clothes of the scholars of West Africa. What is in his hand? It's a book. It's education. And it is through education and deconstruction of history, we can take down the ideology of white supremacy and then help people to appreciate each other. That Canada and other places can be a country where we can hold hands together in dignity, and we don't assume the wrong thing about each other, but we will celebrate the achievements made by all human beings. So I leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah to have mercy on me and you. And I want to congratulate Islam Unravelled, and I pray that Allah will continue to bless you. Thank you very much for your time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Brother Abdullah, for the insightful lesson about Black history. As a Black Muslim woman, I believe it's vital to have support from leaders like you. And thank you for advocating for the lives of Black people. And just to add on, I too remember using the phrase, is it the real McCoy? Growing up in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
That's right.
I would like to thank all of you for being with us today. We have had a meaningful discussion about combating anti-Blackness. And it means a lot that you're dedicating your time and effort to a meaningful cause. Our final speaker is Brother Bilal Chima. Brother Bilal Chima is a community leader and an organizer who graduated from Simon Fraser University with a degree in business administration. He has spent the majority of his adult life building diverse and strong relationships between communities. He has advised numerous federal ministries in senior capacity, including the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Fisheries and Oceans, and Ministry of Immigration. Most recently, he was a lead senior negotiator for Canada, tasked to negotiate complex resource-related elements of treaties and self-government with First Nations. He will be concluding the closing remarks on behalf of the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Welcome, Brother Bilal.
Thank you, Sister Naima. Thank you so much for facilitating today's beautiful event. I honestly, right now, I'd like to dedicate my time to Dr. Abdullah so he can continue. Wow, it's beautiful, the history. And you don't hear it often enough, right? You don't get this, and we need to change that. I guess it's progress, step by step, year by year, little bit by little bit will affect change in the institutions that teach the young minds in the universities. But I got to give a shout out to George Crumb and John Purdy for inventing potato chips that have always been a big part of my life, and also the folding chair, because nowadays with my poor knee and my weight problem, I pray on that folding chair. Thank you, everyone. It was beautiful to listen from Brother Haroon on down to the stories and reflections and just hearing perspective. You know, it's 25 years since Parliament in Canada has recognized Black History Month. And since that time, little bit by little bit, there's been more awareness, recognition, appreciation, celebration, but more needs to be done. And it's events like these that are put on by other people of color, other communities, in celebrating those Black lives, celebrating brothers and sisters of the Black community, that is going to breathe life into this process and this project that we're working on here in Canada, where one Prime Minister of the past called it a community of communities. You know, this I'm not going to talk a little so much about some of the history, because I think there are speakers before us so eloquently touched on it. Recognize that, you know, I know that Madam RACHNA Singh, our parliamentary secretary, is here. His Worship Mayor Hurley from Burnaby is here. And these people are leaders. These people have sacrificed some of their time to be with us here on Friday night. They're doing things and contributing to public service for the right reasons, for honorable reasons, and making life better for all of their constituents, communities across the province and within specific communities like Burnaby. So thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. And thank you for contributing to this celebration. Of course, governments can always do better, and governments should not be left to take on this workload. It's communities, it's people, it's individuals, it's partners, it's families. All of us collectively are breathing life and need to continue to acknowledge, celebrate the resiliency, the innovation that Dr. Abdullah Hakim spoke about, and the determination to ensure that there's recognition for the work and the contributions of Black brothers and sisters in Canada and in the Americas and across the world, but also for our work that we need to do as people of color towards building a more inclusive and diverse Canada, where everyone has an opportunity to flourish. So I want to say that, recognize that the last couple of years have been better, right? We've had a Prime Minister that's moving from words to actions. You know, just in the last year, we've seen, you know, during the pandemic, where there were specific envelopes of money that was dedicated to the Black entrepreneur, the Black business person, to support those initiatives that would help uplift communities, and communities that traditionally have been left behind. And just in recent days, we've had the Minister of Justice enact some changes to the criminal, to the justice system of Canada that disproportionately impacted Indigenous and Black Canadians. And that is something that we need to celebrate. That I'm really happy. Progress is slow. Our work that we are doing collectively to remember, to celebrate, to plan is going to help empower the government to move faster, and we can do that. So, you know, I'm really appreciative of the work that the Prime Minister has done, and his cabinet and his government has done. I want to thank him for leading on some of these initiatives to support, create programs that support these traditionally marginalized communities, and start allowing them to uplift themselves. And remember, this is our duty to understand our past, whether it's domestic past, whether it's a pre-Confederation past, our past as one continent, and honor it, and to engage and reflect and look at the present and how to improve it and to imagine a whole new future, and to drive and forge it in an ethical, effective, and expansive way. We can do this. And it's the people that lead, and the governments reflect and make decisions. So once again, thank you for everyone for participating. And also I want to give a shout out to the brothers and sisters of Islam Unravelled. I know I saw Sheikh Asim Rashid, whose beautiful work led to the creation of Islam Unravelled. And we would love, we can't wait for him to be back with us here in Canada, to continue this work and to grow this work and to build these bridges across the community, across the British Columbia and across Canada. So thank you so much. We appreciate what the government has done, and also I know that the government appreciates the work that Islam Unravelled and all of you are doing across the country in your own little worlds. And again, thank you, Brother Abdul Hakim. I love that little lesson. And I look forward to maybe engaging more through Brother Tariq and helping maybe take some classes myself. Thank you, guys. Take care.